Hello, I'm Louis Orloff, Managing Director of Reserve Fund Advisors. We specialize in helping associations manage their reserve funds for the best possible future. Today, we're going to look at a solution to the continuously rising assessments and increasing fees through careful investing. To begin with, living in an association community is a pay-as-you-go lifestyle. For example, every day you drive on the driveway. Your car uses up a little bit of the coating that's on the concrete. And the funds that you pay each month ensure that there will be adequate funds available in the future to replace the concrete coating that you have used up. Now, when you purchased your condominium, along with the then amount of coating on the concrete, you acquired an interest in the reserve funds that had been saved prior to replace what coating had been used. And I know this is a little bit complicated, but this is the balance between reserve funds and the quality of your property. Now, investing can mean a lot of different things. You can put your money in a mattress, or a bank, or equities, or even precious metals. For simplicity, today we're going to talk about the difference between investing your funds in a checking account at the bank or investing your funds the same way that any long-term investor would invest. And what we have done is we've taken an actual 30-year reserve study for an association located in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we're going to get all of the projected spending from that report into the proper years, into the proper buckets. And you know, I see in the data that in 1 year we spend like almost nothing, and in another year I think it's $1,300,000 something. And so there's this range with all the other years where all the expenditures are somewhere in between. So what we have is this really bumpy ride. And this is a look into the future of 30 years. Now, in this actual study, which was done in 2018, you could say the future is 28 years and 2 years in the past. And let's just pretend that you have a reserve study right here, and you're sitting at the board. You're on the board of your association, and the reserve study company comes in and hands you the reserve study to everybody on the board. And it says, here's what you're going to have to spend in the future. And there are things in there like parking lots and roofs and swimming pools and the balconies. And you know, you hope that we hired the right people to do this study, but they're the kind of people who are experts. They understand Florida. They're not going to talk to us about ice damage or snowplow damage, but you know, we have our own harshness. We've got a salt environment. We've got bright sun, all those things. And so they walk around the property, they take a look at the buildings, and as we all know, they come up with lots of things. But let's just take one. In 18 years from now, the reserve study says you're probably going to have to replace all the balconies, all the railings, all the concrete, complete new everything. But is it really 18 years? Or is it 16? Is it maybe 16? Or is it maybe 21? Well, we're going to know when we get closer to year 16. If they're starting to fall apart in year 16, then we've got a problem, because that's too early. But we'll know that a couple of years before that. And that's the way our reserve study works, number one. And number two, the way the payments are funded works differently. Now, unless we all want to just be ready for the bill, and in the year that we spend $1.3 million, we just all come together in this room here and toss into the hat our proportional share of the $1.3 million. And in any year that it's a zero, we just throw a big party and have a good time. Well, that's not really the way it works. We put in a flat amount every month. So number 2 is that we have a mismatch. We have these variable, highly variable expenditures, plus the variability of emergencies, and we have this level funding coming in. The result of that, like it or not, is a pool of assets. And the reality is that that pool of assets is either adequate, more than adequate, or inadequate when making the bill. So I started thinking, let me take you to number 3 now. What would be the solution that would make it more than adequate most of the time? Well, one of the things would be, let's just charge a lot more money. I'm only kidding, but that is a solution. But I thought about it, and I thought, what are we doing to invest the money that's sitting in the reserves? And I thought, you think about investing money, and the first problem I thought of is, Uncle Vinny's racehorse, orange groves, or avocado groves in Morocco, or whatever it is. And there's a lot of stuff that goes wrong in investing. But then I had a second thought. I thought about the various state pension funds. And there are teachers and state and county employees that work their entire lives. And they do exactly this. They squirrel away some money every month for their future. And people invest that money seriously. And they seem to do really well with it. And it's what funds all those retirement benefits. And that money, this is serious money. Like reserves are serious money. You don't want to get a bill that you didn't save any money for all of a sudden because everything was poorly handled. But let's face it, this is the money these people need to put food on the table, pay their life expenses. And best of all, this is a broadly accepted, prudent way to invest money for the future. And for associations, there's a way to do it. So I started studying the way to do it. And I thought, all right, if we can invest like that, what would be the difference? So let me show you something here. Looking at a bank account, which right now yields nothing, and after inflation, less than nothing. And that's a problem. That's a problem we have right now. In a way, I started thinking about this because rates keep going lower and lower, and something needs to happen. And then I thought, well, what if I invested like, say, the state of Florida, or maybe even 30% in the S&P 500, and 30% in quality bonds? Or how about some in an index? What would all that look like? And I realized this is a lot of information, it's complicated, and I need to put this down in a model. Get it into a piece of paper so we can actually make a comparison. But I needed something else. I needed actual performance, because we can't just make this up. Something solid and true. So I went back 30 years of the Florida retirement system, and I said, all right, the last 30 years of their performance, which includes some great years, everybody, this includes some great years in bonds and in higher rates, and they include a lot of things, but they also include 2000, 2001, 2008. I mean, they include, October of 87. All of this stuff is in those numbers. So I've got the good, the bad, and the ugly built in. And what I did was, I said, let's superimpose this and go to the actual, meaning we take this original reserve study that starts with a pot of around $1.1 million, and because we're planning on having a big spending in the next 3 years, we're still putting $545,000 a year in on top of that. And what's a good, prudent way to invest to gain those returns? And I chose the most conservative way, which keeps everything we're spending in the next 3 years, everything we're planning on spending in the next 3 years, in cash or cash equivalents in the bank, and we fully fund those next 3 years. And I think the results are going to shock you. But what I can tell you is what our reserve study guide says. This I can tell you for sure. It tells us what we need to put away. And it tells us approximately when we will need to spend it. What I can also tell you is that the amount we're currently assessing and anticipating assessing is in this study. And I know that going forward. Now, I have no idea what the Florida pension system is going to do for the next 30 years. I know the professionals. I know they have rules. I know they're fiduciaries. I know they're good at what they do. And I can take the last 30 years of actual performance. And yeah, there are some years, there's some stinkers in there, and there's some good years in there. But it's a diversified, fiduciarily run pension fund. And I got even more conservative because the stuff that I'm holding in cash, that 3-year cushion that eliminates the effects of market fluctuations, that cost of protection is that we are not getting the Florida Retirement Plan returns. We're just getting the bank returns, which is next to nothing. So this is not a full-out take all our money and invest it in the stock market. This actually is really keeping good reserves. But stuff that's going to sit there, like those balconies for 18 years out, theoretically, a couple of bucks of what you're putting in today is funding those balconies 18 years from now. And there's some of this money is 18-year money now. There's a lot of 1, 2, and 3-year money. But what if we invest it? What we know is going to sit there for a while, like the balcony money and the 25-year money. And the reserve study lays all of that out for us. So we just start breaking out those dollars and allocating them into what's got to be spent soon and what's going to be spent later and what's going to be spent much later. And if we invest according to that and we follow a great investment manager, like the Florida Pension Fund, or even just a 70-30 split, look at the results, including the bad years. So what I did was I did not run some hypothetical scenario that says, hey, what do you think the stock market's going to do? It's going to be up 6.5% for the next 30 years. No. I put the really bad stuff in. And I designed something that actually can mitigate the volatility of the marketplace. So that said, I grant you, using 30 years past performance because that's actual, and I'm using future reserve numbers because that's what I've got, showing me the future. And this is an illustration of how you fund the future. And what I'm talking to you about now is the future and having a better one. Thank you.